Hey, what up, nigga? Odu, and the Ifa concept of history. Part 4, the African perspective. The African perspective. Ba'awo Falokun Batumbi. An examination of history based on the oral traditions of Egyptian and the Yoruba culture represents a radically different view of the accomplishments of our ancient African ancestors than the information presented by the mass media, and is in stark contrast to the paradigm propagated by orthodox academic dogma. From the perspective of Ifa spiritual discipline, this conflict in historical perspectives can cause serious problems. Communication with the ancestors, Igun, is a fundamental component of the Ifa liturgical process. We run the risk of limiting our own good fortune by failing to appreciate the depths of wisdom available to us through serious dialogue with those who have come before us. If we do not believe the ancients were able to use stone structures to generate energy, we will never ask them to tell us how it is done. If we do not believe the ancients were able to create interdimensional portals, we will never know what it is on the other side of the veil. Our understanding of the past informs us about who we are and inspires our vision of who we can become. The official version of history would have us to believe that Africa was a primitive place isolated from the rest of humanity until it embraced Christianity, a place that remains unable to govern itself and unable to develop its natural resources. The lie has been told so often and so well that anyone proposing an alternative perspective is suspect. In part 3 of this series, the suggestion was made that Nikola Tesla may have rediscovered some of the lost technology developed by ancient Egyptian culture. Tesla claimed that many of his insights came as the result of dialogue with interdimensional beings. An interesting admission coming from one of the pioneers of the electronic age. Tesla was granted hundreds of patents, and they were all virtually based on first-time drawings of his original ideas. This means his inventions manifested in his own consciousness as fully developed concepts needing no correction or alteration. This means his inventions manifested in his own consciousness as fully developed concepts needing no corrections or alterations. Given Tesla's description of his own internal process, the question arises, was this skill the result of his personal genius? Or was it also, or more so, the result of the effectiveness of his communication with spirit? I suspect there was a large dose of both. According to Ifa ancestral wisdom, we become who we are by standing on the shoulders of those who come before us. We become who we are by standing on the shoulders of those who come before us. If our understanding of our ancestors is distorted, we cannot begin to know who we are, let alone build on our ancestral heritage. Ignorance is fertile ground for manipulation. A manipulated life fails to develop to its fullest potential. When I first started studying Ifa over 25 years ago, I was told that Ifa no longer existed in Africa. My first trip to Africa completely dispelled that lie, and subsequent trips have left me humbled and astonished by the amount of wisdom and understanding that is available from elders who are largely ignored outside of their own communities. If you believe Ifa is no longer practiced in Africa, or if you believe the Ifa practiced in the diaspora is somehow better, than the wisdom that exists in its place of origin, your expectation will only confirm your short-sighted belief. If you assume something does not exist, you will never find it, even if you bump right into it. Even when you bump right into it. Ifa says those who cannot call the names of their ancestors going back 7 generations cannot seat their Ori consciousness, their Ori in the world. Ifa says those who cannot call the names of their ancestors going back 7 generations cannot seat their Ori consciousness in the world. In an effort to understand where we have come from, it is necessary to look seriously at and understand the legacy of past generations. Taking a serious look means challenging the propaganda and misinformation that shaped the consciousness of those of us who were manipulated by a Western education. Our institutions of higher learning are set up to support industry. Industry in this country is dependent on the exploitation of global resources, and exploitation requires justification. The conflict between justification and illumination is a financial struggle, and those who are interested in reinforcing justification have the economic advantage. The Ifa creation myth indicates there was an extended period of peace and harmony on the earth, a time when a global priesthood venerated the spirit of light, commonly called sun worship, known by a wide range of names in virtually every early culture known to history, manifesting in Yoruba culture as Obatala. If the Egyptian and Sumerian records are accurate, this period in history lasted at least 70,000 years. If we consider the fact that most of the technology used in the contemporary world was developed in the past 100 years, the potential for developing unimaginable technology over a period of 70,000 years staggers the imagination. In the words of Arthur C. Clarke, any significant advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Western culture denigrates magic. As a result, anything in historical record that appears magically is immediately dismissed as untrue. Western culture denigrates magic, and as a result, anything in historical record that appears magically is immediately dismissed as untrue. The knee-jerk criteria becomes if we can't do it, then they can do it. The knee-jerk criteria becomes if we can't do it, they couldn't do it. As a result, perception becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. Self-fulfilling prophecy. This is a problem of Ori consciousness. The mind that creates a problem is not the mind that can fix the problem. If you can appreciate the possibility that the pyramid at Giza was a power plant, many of the pieces of the archaeological record start to fit together in a coherent pattern. One of the difficulties in seeing this pattern is the belief that history is linear. One of the difficulties in seeing this pattern is the belief that history is linear. The linear model is based on the belief that time moves forward, making culture and civilization progressively better. The notion of unconditional cultural progress is the result of the influence of Darwinian theories of survival of the fittest on the political theories used to justify the exploitation by those who have monopolized the development of superior weapons of mass destruction. One of the earliest manifestations of the effect on politics of Darwinian theory was Hitler's notion of a master race. German academics in the early years of the 20th century argued that the development of sophisticated weapons gave Germans the moral right to rule the world. Their excuse for invading Austria, Poland, and France was that each of these countries represented a threat to national security. Slight provocations were used as an excuse for military action. In retrospect, we now know that most of the provocations were engineered by the Germans themselves to create the illusion of a threat. The illusion of a threat. Before going to war, Hitler burned the Reichstag, German parliament, and blamed the fire on radicals, which at the time was a code word for people of Jewish ancestry. If the purpose of life were to dominate and control others, the Darwinian argument would be valid. If the purpose of life is to live in harmony with the environment and make the earth a better place, then the argument is insane. Ifa, as well as most indigenous spiritual traditions, teaches the idea that history moves in cycles of growth and decay. This is a fundamental concept necessary to any understanding of Odu. Ifa oral tradition teaches that every Odu emerges from its opposite. For example, Ije Ogbe becomes Oyeku Meji. The single line represents light. The double lines represent darkness. All light fades into darkness, and all darkness emerges into light. A fundamental principle in nature. Be clear, darkness is not evil. Darkness is the absence of light. All matter starts to decay once it comes into existence. The process of decay is symbolized in Ifa as the movement between light and dark. Ifa also teaches the spiritual principle of rebirth, meaning all darkness becomes light. The linear view of history negates the possibility of rebirth as a force of nature. The linear view of history negates the possibility of rebirth as a force of nature. All matter starts to decay once it comes into existence. The process of decay is symbolized in Ifa as the movement between light and dark. Ifa also teaches the spiritual principle of rebirth, meaning all darkness becomes light. The linear view of history negates the possibility of rebirth as a force of nature. This perspective is not consistent with reality and can only be imposed on Ori consciousness through deliberate manipulation, which, as we said, is founded in ignorance, distortion, and control. Understanding the dynamics of transformation is an essential element in any effort to deflect the influence of manipulation, distortion, and control. The study of Odu is the study of the ways in which transformation occurs. For example, the following sequence represents one of the ways light moves towards the darkness. There are an infinite number of ways in which you can track the movement of Ije Ogbe to Eyeku Meji, and back from Eyeku Meji to Ije Ogbe. The point is that everything in existence is a constant state of flux. Is in a constant state of flux, moving in cyclical patterns from source to its opposite polarity and back to source. Nothing in nature is ambiguously progressive, including the development of culture. Most earth-centered spiritual traditions speak of at least 3 previous cycles of development: extinction and rebirth. In the Ifa creation myth, the earliest of these cycles is referred to as the time when Obatala ruled the world with a silver sword. During the period of Obatala's ascendancy as a primary organizing principle in culture, there were amazing developments in what can be described as earth-centered, environmentally friendly, energy-efficient forms of technology. If this technology was based on an objective understanding of the inner mysteries of nature, it should be possible to rediscover the same principles and put them to use for the benefit of life on Earth. An examination of the history of science indicates this is exactly what has occurred. The Orisha are not short humanoids with gray skin and large eyes. The reason the New Age movement has misidentified this aspect of ancient history is because it's based on a myopic view of the past that refuses to accept the possibility that ancient cultures were capable of saying what they meant. The internet is overloaded with speculation on the meaning of UFOs, crop circles, and alien abductions. None of this is a mystery to our African elders. None of this is a mystery to our African elders. Illumination of these apparent mysteries will not come through wild speculation. It will inevitably come through humility. It will inevitably come through humility. Greek cosmology describes the domes as transmitters of two forms of radiant energy. One form flows from the center point in an expanding spiral pattern, the golden mean, symbolized in the Ifa creation myth by the snail shell. The other form flows in a straight line, connecting all of the power spots on the grid, symbolized in Ifa creation myth by Obatala's staff. The existence of two forms of energy explains why Obatala gets drunk. The existence of two forms of energy explains why Obatala gets drunk. If only the male expansive energy connecting the power spots existed, the planet would overheat and become a small star. In symbolic language, the expansive energy would burn out of control and get drunk. The polarity between the male expansive energy and the female contractive energy allows the planet to cool in a way that provides an environment for the manifestation of human life. The lines are described in the Awo of Dambala. Two serpents hold together the universe. One holds the sky, the other holds the oceans of the earth. Here we have the polarity between sky or fire and earth or water. Two forms of energy sustaining creation. In Hermetic tradition, the domes are described as appearing at regular intervals in a set pattern. This does not mean that they all radiate the same quality of energy. The influence of celestial bodies on the planet creates an overlay on the grid pattern. The influence of celestial bodies on the planet creates an overlay on the grid pattern. For example, the Giza Plateau is located on a major ley line. The three pyramids at Giza are a reflection of the stars in the constellation Orion. The radiant energy emanating at Giza has male and female qualities, influenced by the effect of specific stars on the manifestation of that energy. In Ifa, the discipline of studying the cosmological influence of power, Ashe, on domes, Igbodu is called Gide, usually translated to mean astrology. The word itself reveals the true inner mystery. Igbodu is from the Elysian Igbo and Odu, meaning the womb of the forest. Gide is an Elysian of Gi and Dide, meaning female, Ashe, the power of fertility. stands up, or in the context of Igbodu, emerges through the invisible portal. In Africa, many of the sacred sites designated as Igbodu go through seasonal cycles of activation and dormancy. These seasonal cycles are a manifestation of celestial influence marked through the spiritual discipline of Gide, astrology. This means that Gide is not the astrology of personal fortune. It is the astrology of planetary energetic patterns of manifestation. In Odu Ifa, this mystery is described in terms of the time and place when specific Orisha arrived on the earth. The relationship between Eshu's shrine at Alakutu, Obatala shrine at Ile Efe, Oshun's shrine at Oshogbo, and so on, is not history so much as it is reference to an earth mystery identifying the quality of Ashe energy passing through the landscape from this power source. Most of Western science rejects the notions that planets have interrelated influence. There is one significant alternative view. The current model of the relationship between quantum physics, the structure of the atom, and astrophysics, the structure of the universe, is based on string theory. This theory is based on the idea that sound waves created by the Big Bang, the initial explosion of creation, resulted in the manifestation of invisible lines of energy connecting everything in the universe. These strings are sometimes referred to as wormholes. A true understanding of wormholes would give science the ability to travel to distant places in the universe at rates faster than the speed of light. The ancients referred to wormholes as stargates. References are there for those who have the vision to read them. String theory is a modern reinvention of the sacred science developed in Africa before being appropriated by the Greeks. Researchers in England who began studying ley lines in the 19th century noticed that the lines between the domes also marked the existence of underground waterways. This is not a coincidence. This is not a coincidence. The expansive energy emanating from the domes influences the movement of underground water just as it influences the migratory patterns of animals. Water also serves the purpose of amplifying the effect of interdimensional radiant energy that flows from the domes. In simple terms, the domes are interdimensional terraforming technology put in place by spirit and developed by those human elders who were able to see and understand the nature and function of that technology. The ancient priests and priestesses of Obatala understood this relationship, and it became a fundamental element in the creation of their worldview. Historically, there was a progression of development of their understanding. The domes, or power spots, Igbodu, historically, the domes, there was a progression of development in their understanding. Or power spots, Igbodu, were initially located and marked with a stone and or a dirt mound. The stone was placed in such a way that the sun hit a particular spot in the landscape when the dome was activated. An underground chamber was built to concentrate and release small amounts of radiant energy, white light, or Allah. The radiant energy would manifest as pure, unformed consciousness. This means the light can take on the quality of those shamans and priests who project their consciousness onto the light. The chamber operated like a cosmic mirror, symbolized by Oshun's mirror, amplifying the intentions of those who stood before it. This is the reason why the initiates of Obatala put so much emphasis on good character. Igbodu is exactly like a computer, garbage in, garbage out, or elevation of spirit in, elevation of spirit out. Oriku develops as a way of imprinting radiant energy with sound vibrations called Ofo Ashe in Yoruba that would sustain fertility, peace, elevation, enlightenment, and harmony. The light projected into the underground water and carried throughout the landscape takes the effect of these incantations for long distances, creating a land ruled by a silver sword. The sword, symbol of consciousness, of elevation. We know this because the process is still being used in Ile-Ife. It's still being used in Ile-Ife. To the extent that this is not done in the diaspora is the extent to which we still have things to learn from our elders in Africa. To the extent that this is not done in the diaspora is the extent to which we still have things to learn from our elders in Africa. To the extent that this process was disrupted in Africa by Christian missionaries is the extent to which the Christian denigration of African culture becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. As the priestly understanding of domes increased, the stone structures used to mark them became more elaborate and complex, often involving the placement of massive rocks transported long distances. The list of theories offered to explain the rock-moving techniques used by our ancient ancestors is extensive. The problem with most of the theories is that those who make them are unable to reproduce the results. They are unable to move stones of the size and weight used to build megalithic temples. There is one notable exception, and that is the castle built in Homestead, Florida by Edward Cali'sKALYPZO in the early years of the last century. In an article by Christopher Dunn in Atlantis Rising magazine, the accomplishments of the Latvian immigrant are compared to the building techniques of the ancient Egyptians. An immigrant of the United States, Cali'sKALYPZO, devised a means to single-handedly lift and maneuver blocks of coral weighing up to 30 tons each. In Homestead, Florida, using his closely guarded secret, he was able to quarry and construct an entire complex of megalithic blocks of coral in an arrangement that reflected his own unique character. On average, the weight of a single block used in the coral castle was greater than those used to build the Great Pyramid. He labored for 28 years to complete this work, which consisted of a total of 1,100 tons of rock. What was Cali'sKALYPZO's secret? Is it possible for a 5-foot-tall, 110 man to accomplish such a feat without knowing techniques that are uncommon to contemporary understanding of physics and mechanics? Cali'sKALYPZO was a student of the universe. Within his castle walls, built of coral blocks weighing approximately 15 tons each, he had a 22-ton obelisk, a 22-ton moon block, a 23-ton Jupiter block, a Saturn block, a 9-tib gate, a rocking chair that weighed 3 tons, and numerous puzzles. A huge 30-ton block, which he considered to be his major achievement, he crowned with the gavel-shaped rock. Cali'sKALYPZO claimed his technique involved understanding the magnetism in relationship to the flow of force fields, ley lines, along the surface of the Earth, and the ability to use those force fields to eliminate the effect of gravity. Beyond that, he remained silent. The government made repeated efforts to learn his secret, and he refused to give any of the details. The castle is currently a museum open to the public, and the official history of his remarkable accomplishment says He moved the entire structure from Shangri-La, Florida to Homestead, Florida by using his secret to load the massive stones on a truck. No truck ever built can hold 30 tons of rock, making the accomplishment truly amazing and the official explanation less than adequate. B.J. Cathy, a prominent contemporary researcher in the phenomena associated with the Earth grid, offered an explanation to Cali'sKALYPZO's castle.
There exists an all-encompassing global grid with direct harmonic relationship to the speed of light, gravity, magnetics, and Earth mass. All major changes of the physical state are brought about by harmonic interactions of these manifestations. The controlled manipulation of these forces would make it possible to instantaneously move mass from one point to another in space-time. Measurements from Coral Castle yield harmonics related to light and gravity. The distance between Coral Castle and grid pole A dispel any doubt about the site being an ideal position to allow Cali'sKALYPZO to erect the huge blocks of coral with relative ease. Measurements indicate the harmonics necessary for the manipulation of anti-gravity.
If Cathy is correct in her analysis, Cali'sKALYPZO's methods would eliminate the need for a use of a truck, movement coupled with time displacement. Such a possibility is so far outside the normal range of contemporary human experience, it invokes easy skepticism. In an article titled Acoustic Levitation of Stones, Cathy describes the experience of a Swedish doctor named Jari, who traveled to Tibet in 1939 to treat an ailing Lama, Buddhist priest. During his visit, Jari was invited to witness the construction of a wall leading to the entrance of a cave located 250 meters above ground. Directly under the mouth of the cave, the doctor observed a semicircle of 19 drums arranged in a 90-degree arch around a large stone. When the stone was in position, the monk behind the small drum gave a signal to start the concert. The small drum had a very sharp sound and could be heard even with the other instruments making a terrible ding. All the monks were singing and chanting a prayer, slowly increasing the tempo of this unbelievable noise. During the first 4 minutes, nothing happened. Then as the speed of the drumming and the noise increased, the big stone started to rock and sway. And suddenly it took off in the air with an increasing speed and in the direction of the platform in front of the cave hole, 250 meters high. From time to time, a stone split and the monks moved the split stones away. Quite an unbelievable task. Dr. Jarl was sent to Tibet on behalf of the English Society. While in Tibet, he filmed the rock moving process. When he returned to England, the film was confiscated and has never been shown in public. To assert the notion that the power spots of antiquity were developed by a global culture of a single vision of interconnected spiritual and material relationships requires hard evidence to be credible. An archaeocryptographer, person who makes surveys of ancient structures and cities, named Carl Monk, has used satellite photographs and on-site measuring techniques to make the case for a unified network of sacred sites. Carl Monk believes that in order to understand the enigmatic structures built in antiquity, we must first understand the mathematical precisions of the earth. The basic elements of his system of analysis include counting the number of obvious features at a given site, locate the position of the site in relationship to the prime meridian, which he believes was originally located at the Giza Plateau. Then, correlate the position to other known monuments in the grid. For example, Monk analyzed the Kukulkan Pyramid at Chichen Itza in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico in an article by Laura Lee. The pyramid shows us 9 terraces. This is the first number we use to assemble our formula for the decoding process. This is the first number we use to assemble our formula for the decoding process. The secret number is 365. Kukulkan has 4 staircases, 1 on each side of the monument. On each staircase are 91 steps. For the 4, that totals 365 steps, with the top platform of the pyramid being the 365th step, giving us our second number, 365. There are 4 sides and 4 staircases. We now have all the numbers shown by the architects and put the decoding formula together. 9 terraces times 365 steps times 4 sides and 4 stairways equaling 52,560. 52,560 is also is also arrived by multiplying the numbers, the ancient grid coordinates for Kukulkan, 119 degrees times 42 minutes times 10.5162024 seconds. 52,560. In the process of surveying ancient sites, Monk discovered that the grid coordinates were carved into the stone monuments using an early form of writing called ogam, looking similar to hash marks used to count the sets of 5, i.e. 4 vertical lines crossed by a single horizontal line. Monk has published a number of highly technical volumes of data recording the result of his global surveying effort. His work is further confirmation of a global culture based on veneration of the sun and the use of natural earth-centered technology for both scientific and spiritual elevation. Egyptian oral tradition suggests the large stone pillars and obelisk located across the planet were used for sending messages across the grid. The idea sounds unlikely if you're not familiar with the vibrating telephone, developed by Nathan B. Stubblefield in 1888 and installed as Kentucky's first public communication system. Stubblefield located ley lines throughout the rugged Kentucky landscape. He developed a system for accessing power from the grid and used that power to send messages back through the grid. Stubblefield located places with the ley lines, hermetic domes, and inserted iron rods wrapped with copper wire insulated with cotton. Using this simple method, he was able to draw electricity from the earth that he used to power transmitters and receivers he called ground telephones. The messages were sent to the earth without the aid of wires, and the sound quality was superior to the conventional phone systems used at the time. He used his understanding of the grid to create lamps that needed no bulbs and no electricity outlets other than a connection to his rods. Jerry Vasilatos describes Stubblefield's work in his book, Lost Science. Mr. Stubblefield experimented with the buried power receiver and a system of telephone sets. He found it possible to send vocal signals through the ground to a distant receiver, referring to this system as a ground telephone. Telephoning through the ground became routine for this remarkable man. Signals sent through the Stubblefield method were notable for the reported great clarity. What is strange about this system is this elegant simplicity. Stubblefield's transmitting system evidences are almost crude minimalism, which offends some researchers while surpassing others and surprising everyone. A few feet apart from each distantly placed set, speech between the two sets was loud and clear, despite distances of 3,500 to 6,000 feet. After making several unsuccessful attempts to get financial backing for his system, Stubblefield went into seclusion, developing his ideas and applying them to the rural area for which he lived. All of the components he used for his inventions were made from simple materials available to our ancient ancestors. In parts of rural Kentucky, he is still considered somewhat of a folk hero, where traces of his system remain intact. There is some speculation that the projection of sound by the ancients was enhanced by the use of crystals. Large circular crystals have been found throughout Egypt and are typically described as altar objects. It is interesting to note that Cali'sKALYPZO, the sacred mound in Ile-Ife, identified as the home of Orunmila, is an outcropping of silicone crystal chips directly above an elaborate system of underground water channels. It is the place where Egbe Ifa continues to say prayers and make Igbo. Egyptian oral history also suggests that sound generated by the size and shape of stones located on the grid were used for healing both physical and mental illness. Many of the ancient temples in Egypt have niches, the approximate size of a coffin. Archaeologists look at them and assume they were cut as burial slots. It is more likely that they were used as healing tables, like the padded beds found in a contemporary doctor's office. Again, the idea of sound therapy would seem fanciful if it not for the research of Dr. R. Raymond Rife. In 1920, Dr. Rife invented the ultraviolet projection microscope. The invention was effective in capturing images of cell structure with far greater magnification than is currently possible with high-tech electron microscopes. In simple terms, the microscope used ultraviolet light projected through prisms in a way that lost none of the clarity and focus generated by other systems of high magnification. Dr. Rife was the first to capture images of the various viruses that are the cause of a wide range of illnesses. While watching these viruses under his projection microscope, he discovered the viruses were affected by sound and could be effectively dissolved through the use of sound waves. He did extensive research identifying specific waves, frequencies, and amplitudes needed to cure specific viral infections. His research was confiscated by the government and is currently unavailable. If his research were in fact an effective means of curing viral infections, the use of sound therapy would literally destroy the pharmaceutical drug industry. The use of sound therapy would literally destroy the pharmaceutical drug industry. The sale of prescription drugs represents 18% of the American gross natural product. This statistic begs the obvious question. Rife was not alone in his effort to find alternative healing methods that were prevalent in ancient times. If the ancient Egyptians used sound therapy at their temples, the use of sound would function in conjunction with the natural therapeutic effect of the energy flowing along the grid lines of the earth. Dr. William Reich discovered that he could generate the energy found along the ley lines by constructing a box using the alternating layers of organic and inorganic material, i.e., alternating layers of metal and wood. This simple idea generated what he called orgone energy. And Reich spent most of his career as a doctor studying the positive and negative effects of orgone energy on physical and mental health. He also discovered that if he projected orgone energy into the sky, it would affect the weather. It would affect the weather. That if he projected orgone energy into the sky, it would affect the weather. The government confiscated Reich's research, and he died in jail awaiting trial. Ashe, we say. When Reich first started building his therapeutic boxes, he discovered that the temperature inside the box was higher than the temperature outside the box. According to current laws of physics, this would be impossible. He demonstrated the effect to Albert Einstein, who was stunned by the revelation and was unable to provide an explanation. The use of alternating layers of organic and inorganic material is the structure of the Ark of the Covenant. Alternating layers of wood and gold built to specific geometric proportions. The Ark was supposed to be used as a medium of communication with the Elohim. Biblical scholars tend to translate the word Elohim to mean God. The actual translation is gods, plural. The Ark was in fact an energy accumulator used to access interdimensional realms of being in the same way that hermetic domes along the power grid were used as interdimensional access points. Western historians would have us believe that there was only one Ark and that it was first created by Moses. In fact, the Ark was a common device used among the Egyptians, and a number of boxes identical in size and structure to the Ark of the Covenant were found in the tomb of King Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun. Wow. Tutankhamun. Six of these boxes were taken from Egypt to Europe by the Knights Templar in the 13th century and are believed to be buried under the Templar Chapel in Roslin, Scotland. The history of the Ark of the Covenant traces its movement from the temple in Jerusalem to an island in Ethiopia and eventually to a small church in Aksum, Ethiopia. The reason for this move will be discussed in a future installment. If the sacred technology of the ancient world was based on an in-depth understanding of nature, it should be possible to reproduce the accomplishments of our ancestors that are reported in the myths and legends of antiquity. A survey of visionaries who stepped outside the conventions of the Western worldview suggests that the rediscovery of ancient metaphysics has generated a long list of effective alternatives to mainstream science and technology. This raises the question of why has so much time and effort been devoted to the suppression of these reoccurring discoveries? And what is the big secret that academia wants to keep hidden from the general public? The commonly held Western worldview is deeply rooted in what is generally referred to as the scientific method. It is based on the idea that objective scientific theory is only valid if it can accurately predict the consequences that result from the interaction between specific forces in nature. For example, if heat is applied to water, it generates steam, and the liquid is transformed into gas. Anyone who observes the application of heat to water will witness the same effect. The formulation of the scientific method produced the Industrial Revolution. That has transformed the consciousness of the entire planet. The formulation of the scientific method produced the Industrial Revolution that has transformed the consciousness of the entire planet. The method was unchallenged until a scientist named Wigner suggested that the consciousness of the observer had an effect on the results of the scientific experiment. Notice that physicists who believed light was made up of particles created experiments that proved light was made up of particles, while physicists who believed light was made up of waves created experiments proving light was made up of waves. Stephen Hawking says the eventual goal of science is to provide a single theory that describes the whole universe. Such an endeavor is called unified field theory. Unified field theory. As a step towards creating unified field theory, scientists became very interested in conducting experiments in a vacuum. The use of a vacuum was believed to eliminate the possible influence of invisible forces on a particular experiment. A vacuum is essentially an enclosed space in which all gas, including air, has been pumped out. Much to the dismay of Western science, it was discovered that vacuums generated an electromagnetic pulse. It was assumed that this energetic pulse was a residual effect of radiation from the sun. In an effort to eliminate this radiation from the vacuum, the enclosed space was drained of all heat until it reached the point of 0 degrees Celsius. The theory was that freezing the vacuum would dissipate the radiation. At 0 point temperatures, scientists still discovered the existence of electromagnetic pulses inside the vacuum. If the temperature countered the heat from the sun, then the electromagnetic energy had to come from somewhere, and the only possible source of radiation was an interdimensional transference of energy. Having the key to this interdimensional window creates access to an unlimited source of free energy. Having the key to this interdimensional window creates an access to an unlimited source of free energy. Pick up any textbook on electrical engineering. Just go ahead. Just find any one of them. Just the first one you see. Pick up any textbook on electrical engineering. Just pick up any textbook on electrical engineering, all right? And the textbooks, all these textbooks gonna have, now all the textbooks have tables showing the wave patterns of electrical currents at different temperatures. You understand me? Pick up any book. Pick up any textbook on electrical engineering, right? Pick up any textbook on electrical engineering, all right? I'm gonna say that to you concisely, right up to your anus right there. I'm gonna, you know what I mean? You feel me? Any textbook on electrical engineering. The textbooks all have tables showing the wave patterns of electrical currents at different temperatures. When you get to the place on the chart marked 0 degrees, there's an asterisk which directs the reader to a footnote. The footnote says,
the data related to 0 point electromagnetic radiation is classified by the United States government for reasons of national security, you understand?
No joke. Right there at the asterisk where it refers you to the footnote. And the footnote actually has this one little disclaimer, my nigga. It says that you probably don't want to worry about even really worrying about what it is that you is worrying about. What is so dangerous about understanding the fundamental laws of physics? What is so dangerous about understanding a fundamental law of physics? The electromagnetic impulse generated by 0 point vacuums is pre-atomic in structure. In other words, it is made up of fundamental units of energy that come together to form matter. In other words, it is made up of fundamental units of energy that come together to form matter. These pre-atomic units are called gravitons, and they are responsible for the effect of gravity in the universe. Gravitons move from the 4th dimension to the 3rd dimension as a result of planetary and stellar spin. Scientists first discovered this phenomenon during the Apollo mission to the moon. Using Newtonian physics, NASA engineers calculated that the Apollo craft would leave the pull of the Earth's gravity at a distance of 221,586 miles from the Earth and be pulled toward the moon by the moon's gravitational field. This calculation was important for creating the slingshot effect used to gauge when the craft needed to fire its buster rockets. You understand? Physics. You understand? Astrophysics even. The actual point at which the moon started to pull the craft was a distance of 202,827 miles. 202,827 miles. Miles? The 19,000 mile discrepancy was the result of gravitons generated by the spin of the moon. By the spin of the moon moving between dimensional realities. After this discovery was made, many of the top executives at NASA, including Wernher von Braun, resigned and went into private industry. Very strange. When he was about 23 years old, Einstein claimed to have solved the mystery of unified field theory. If he did, it means he understood the relationship between interdimensional reality and gravity, you understand? You understand? I mean, that he made the connection, he made the bridge between reality and gravity, you understand? Interdimensional reality, that is. If he did, it means he understood the relationship between interdimensional reality and gravity. Shortly after making the announcement concerning his discovery, Einstein claimed his theory was inaccurate and withdrew the data relating to his theory. The top scientists in physics, as well as the top scientists in NASA, know the ancient mystery of African sacred technology, and they are determined to keep it a secret. How do we know? They know. The data collected by Russian scientists marks the flow of electromagnetic pulses along the ley lines based on technical readings using sophisticated equipment. Based on their research, the strongest dome center in the United States is located in Washington, D.C. The original streets of the city are laid out in a way that mirrors the flow of Earth energy from the center point of the dome. The original streets of the city are laid out in a way that mirrors the flow of the Earth energy, from the center point of the dome. Exactly at the center point of the dome, the founding fathers built Washington's monument in the shape of an obelisk. For those who are interested, here is the secret that is being suppressed. Time is energetic. Time carries the fundamental building blocks of creation. The fundamental building blocks of creation emerge from gravity. It is possible to access gravity through the use of spherical spin. Understanding the structure and dynamics of time opens the portals to unlimited sources of energy and allows for the displacement of time. This is the Awo, or mystery, that enabled our ancient ancestors to build the pyramids. Cut a stone in a stone in the shape of a ball. Cut a stone in the shape of a ball. Cut a stone in the shape of a ball. Cut a stone in the shape of a ball. Attach magnets to the ball at the equator. Yes, you gotta go to the equator before you even attach the magnets. You gotta be on the equator when you attach the magnets to the ball. Don't wait. Don't attach the magnets to the ball before you get to the equator. You want to be on the, I don't know, just in case. You had the magnets though, because if you forget the magnets, you're going to have to leave the ball at the equator, and then you're going to have to go back because the ball is heavy. It's a big ass stone, right? So you're going to put the magnets on there once you get to the equator. If you ain't already on the equator, you know what I'm saying? Okay? Now, if you forget your magnets back at the house, then that means you're going to have to go all the way back to the house just to get the magnets, and you're going to have to carry that ball with you, you know what I'm talking about? Unless you leave the ball there, right? Go back, get your magnets, then by the time you come back, then somebody going to grab your ball from you. So make sure you got your magnets, but don't put them and attach them to the fucking stone that's shaped like a ball until you get to the equator, all right? Okay, cut a stone in the shape of a ball. Attach magnets to the ball at the equator. Spin the ball, okay? All right? At high speeds, the spin generates a mesmer field, okay? Mesmer field, you understand me? Which in Western scientific language means anti-gravitational, all right? You're going to begin to levitate, okay? Now, you want to have a fly female with you, and she's got to be dressed to where, okay, now she got to have a short skirt on. I'm fucking with you. All right, I'm fucking with you. But you are going to have to test this technology, though. Which in Western scientific language means anti-gravitational. Anything you place above the ball will have no weight. See, that's what I'm telling you. Tell her to stand on top of the ball. But first, you got to make sure, you know what I mean? Whatever material, you know what I mean, her summer dress made out of, you know what I mean, is nice and free. It's nice and, you know, complimentary or whatnot. Anything you place above the ball will have no weight. All right. Now, you move huge stones simply by moving this ball. All right. Now, how do you move the ball? Well, the ball is not as large as these big ass stones. Okay. Now, how you gonna get the stone on top of the ball? Well, see, that's why I don't know. Shit, I don't even know how you're supposed to do that. Couple this with an astute understanding of the effect of sound on gravity. Couple this with an astute understanding of the effect of sound on gravity, and you have all the tools you need to build Coral Castle or the Pyramid of Giza. The museum at Coral Castle has a circular stone slab with magnets attached to it, attached to the outer perimeter. This was Cali'sKALYPZO's secret. The secret, he said, was a rediscovery of the methods used by ancient architects to build megalithic stone temples. Gravitons come into being in the third dimension in bundles of 4. 2 strong units, expansive or male, and 2 weak units, contractive or female. This is the fundamental structure of one leg of the Ifa oracle. In part 1 of this series, I suggested that Odu was 0-point energy. The marks of Odu represent all the possible manifestations of 0-point energy moving from the 4th dimension into the 3rd dimension. Odu is a map of the way in which pre-atomic particles form physical reality. Odu is a map of the way in which pre-atomic particles form physical reality. Is this a coincidence? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. The denigration of African spiritual technology clearly has a racist component. It also has a political component related to the fear of African spiritual technology by those political houses that want to maintain their control of global resources by denying humanity access to a true understanding of the mystery of nature. How far does this conspiracy go? The Montauk Indians in Long Island, New York claim they migrated to the United States from Africa long before the arrival of Columbus. The Montauk Indians in Long Island, New York claim they migrated to the United States from Africa long before the arrival of Columbus. Their traditional homeland is near a lake at the end of Long Island that is an access point to one of the major underground waterways on the East Coast. The common ancestral name of the Montauk elders is Pharaoh. They built their homes along the Long Island coast. They built their homes along the Long Island coast with rock in the shapes of pyramids. Just before the American Revolution War, an American scientist lived with the Montauk Indians for 6 months so he could study their language and oral history. He compiled a complete dictionary of the Montauk language and took extensive field notes. When he returned to his home in Virginia, he claimed to have lost the dictionary and all of his notes. Oh, how you do that? And all of his notes. The man's name was Thomas Jefferson. The man's name was Thomas Jefferson. Prior to World War I, the U.S. Park Service dismantled all pyramids built by the Montauk Nation on the Long Island shoreline. The United States government has never given the Montauk Nation Native American status. They continue to fight for this right to this day. Their traditional homeland is currently being used by the military as a research center for non-conventional weapons, i.e. weapons based on the theories of Nikola Tesla, and for the development of technology used for mind control. Can anyone imagine what impact there would have been on the American economy if it were known that the Africans who were forced to come to the United States had access to a sacred technology that was superior to the technology of the oppressing culture? Can anyone imagine? There is a reason why the early laws related to slavery made it a capital offense to practice traditional African religion. I firmly believe the reason was rooted in a fear among the Euro-American elite regarding the inherent power of Odu.